Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, July 14th, 2022. I would like to call this meeting to order, and I would also like to acknowledge that we are within the territory of the Sechelt First Nation. And we've got an agenda in front of us, an amended agenda in front of us. I would like to ask if anybody wants to alter or add to the agenda in any way. No one? Okay. All right. Then I'll have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. The amended agenda.
Point of order, Chair. We need to have a vice chair for this meeting as well.
Oh, right. Yes, we need to do that now. Who can we volunteer to be the vice chair? Len, would you like to be vice chair? Okay. Director Lee. Okay, well, so we'll start with the motion to appoint the vice chair, Leonard Lee. Move seconded. All in favor? All right, thank you. And then we'll adopt the agenda. So we'll go for the motion to adopt the agenda. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. I'll get into this eventually. All right. Then we'll have a motion to accept all the reports. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Okay. All right, and we'll start with number 2, the water supply update. GM Rosenboom, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will start sharing my screen. And then I'll start the presentation. So it's my pleasure again to provide you and the community with a water supply update for July the 14th. The good news is there is still snow at Chapman Lake. It's decreasing fast, but there's still some. So summer has clearly arrived, as we all see when we're outside. The last 2 water supply updates I provided when there was pouring rain outside, so I'm happy that this time around I can at least do it with some sun. But in general, the weather conditions, the cooler weather, and the rain has really resulted in better water supply conditions compared to the previous years, and more on that later. But I think with the current weather, things will start to change in upcoming weeks. This is the weather forecast as of July 7th by Environment Canada, and I think you all are able to read these graphs by now. Blue is cooler than normal, red is warmer than normal. Last several months we were in a blue to neutral white area and surrounded by that as well. So there was and it was all because there was a big amount of cool water in front of Vancouver Island. That cool water has now increased in temperature and not resulting in the same cooler air patterns in our area as well. So it's clearly visible that we're now trending towards warmer than normal for the next month. So on July 1st, staff went up to see what the snow was doing at Chapman Lake. There was still snow on the ground. As you can see, there was, on July 1st, there was over 130 centimeters of snow on the ground, but it was melting rapidly, and we expected last week that decrease went on. But the fact that we still have snow on the ground at this time of year is definitely not common. So we're continuing to meet on a weekly basis to evaluate where we are in terms of our drought response. We have started some patrols. We've received our first complaints and issued our first 2 warnings, and we received some inquiries today. But last several weeks, we really feel that it is picking up, which is to be expected with this kind of weather. So where are we with the Chapman water system? At Chapman Lake, the water is still flowing over the dam, and Edwards Lake is full. Chester Well, which is the well in Alphenstone that we are always putting online the moment we move to stage 2, is ready. It's tested, it's ready to go. Given the current rate of snowmelt, we expect that stage 2 could be anticipated for late July. When exactly, that totally depends on how fast the snow is currently smelting and what that does for the amount of water that's flowing over the weir. But I think a decision on that will be made within the upcoming 2 weeks. Definitely compared to last year, the risk of stage 4 is lower due to the later snowmelt and the cooler weather up until now this summer. More on that later. And as always, we plan to have for dry weather until about mid-October. Last year we had heavy rains in September, but this is the graph for when we called which stage from 2015 to now. And as you can see, blue is stage 1, yellow is stage 2, orange is stage 3, red is stage 4. And as you can see, in 2017, stage 2 was called July 21st, and we still had stage 4 in October because it was a really, really dry fall and a wetter spring. So it's an indication that things could still go in that direction, but the likelihood is definitely becoming less, especially given that compared to 2017, we are more proactive in calling of stages. And 2017 was also the first year that we actually activated the siphon. So let's hope that 2017 is not going to be a repeat, but that 2016 is going to be the repeat for this year. We might hit stage 3, but early, sometime in September, we go back to stage 2. Keats, Eastbourne water system. As expected, as of July, because of the increase in seasonal residents, there is a sharp increase there in water use. The water levels are also increasing, and the large amount of rains in the fall are required to really replenish those wells. So Keats is currently Eastbourne is currently at level 2, and we're confirming if next week or the week after we might need to go to stage 3 there. South Pender, as indicated earlier, South Pender has a maximum amount of water that we can divert per day of 1,800 cubic meters, and we're not there yet. But we've seen some spikes with warm days, so we're monitoring the situation, and we'll call stage 2 there as required in upcoming weeks. Early July, we sent almost 300 leak letters, and to date, about 90 of them are resolved in the last month, and the rest staff are following up with residents. And we currently have about 515 subscriptions to our monthly water supply update. What are we doing otherwise? About 50% of the funds for our rainwater harvesting rebate program is allocated. So if there are people in the community that would like to use that rebate program this year, they're more than welcome to connect with us or look at the website for further information, scad.ca/rainwater. And we started the new program, what we call the Water Use Awareness Pilot Launch. It's really a pilot program where we connect with residents with higher than average water demand, and we connect with them and see how we can make them more aware of their water use. So we do more detailed water meter reads, and we ask the residents to to keep track of their actually water use, and then we can evaluate with them afterwards so that they can see that, for example, when they are using their water, what the difference is in actually the meter data. What about the water supply projects? There's a report on this agenda about Church Road. Things are going well in the sense of that all the water mains are in place along Reed Road, and the roads are have been paved. BC Hydro is connection is almost completed or about to be completed, and the primary focus in upcoming weeks will be on Elphinstone Avenue and the water treatment plant there itself. Langdale Well, we're continuing to work on the drilling of the 2 wells there, and the productivity testing will be completed in August for those, which is, I'm really looking forward to see those results. And we are seeking applicants for the new term of the Water Supply Advisory Committee. Any community member that might be interested in that, just look at the website and you will find the information there on how to apply and what actually the scope will be of the committee for the next 3 years. So stay tuned. Things will change in upcoming weeks, for sure, for several water systems. We'll continue to communicate them through local media, social media, websites, and road signs that are all over the coast. And of course, information is available on our website for anybody that wants more information. And I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
That's me. Thank you. Okay, we'll take it to the directors. Director Pratt, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just to refresh the memory, our water regulations start on May 1st, and what's the end date of that?
The end date is...
Microphone.
The other one. The end date is September 30.
Okay. Now,
Unless we determine that longer is needed.
okay. Being that, just thinking proactively, being that we're, the extended forecast is for a drier fall, should we consider being proactive and extending it now in the regulation? Or you're...
No, how it works is, thank you for the question, by the way, and thanks for thinking along. It goes back to stage, to no stage, unless there's another station that in stage 1 is in place.
Okay, Director McMahon.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that, you know, I hear people saying we're not doing anything about water, but everywhere I go, I see stuff going on about water. I was down at Langdale, and there's the, you know, the drill rig pumping. I was out on my bike the other day, and I got to try out the new pavement on Reed Road, which was especially nice because I had it to myself. And then I was up at the mailboxes, and there they are testing Chaster Well, doing a pump test on Chaster Well. So lots of activity going on, nice to see, and fingers crossed for this year.
All right, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and thanks for the information. The pilot project on the what was it called? It was called, what was it called?
Water use awareness.
The water use awareness. So an invitation went out to 75, voluntary. So I'm just wondering how much uptake you've had on the invitation responses. Invited to the party, but how many want to play? Kind of. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. The invites only went out last week, and so staff are following up with those residents.
Okay, Director Lee.
Great presentation, and I really liked the format of the various stages. It was easy to see with the colors. It was great. I was just wondering, will this presentation be put on the website somewhere?
Yeah, it will be posted on the website today and also shared through social media.
Great, thank you.
All right, I don't see any hands up. In that case, I think we're going to move on to item number 3, the Church Road Wellfield project construction. We did get an update just now already, but I don't know if you want to add anything else, GM Rosenboom?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Our manager of capital project, Steve Mizurek, was supposed to be here, but he is actually on site at Church Road to have a meeting with our contractor, so I'll take the honors. So as I indicated, the primary focus for the next weeks will be around Elphinstone Avenue. All the work on Reed Road has been completed in the sense that the water mains are in place, they are tested. They are not connected yet to the Reed Road pump station because that will be part of the commissioning, because then we actually connect and then we need to work with VCH to make sure that everything is tested, etc. So that will happen at a later date, but that's minor work. Water treatment plant, the building is being constructed as we speak, and the work began on Elphinstone Avenue to install the several water mains that need to be installed there. So that will be also the focus for the next several weeks. The last several months there was talk about supply chain issues, and unfortunately they are becoming more and more realistic, that supply chain issues in terms of associated with the computerized control for our pumps in the water treatment plant will result in a delay in the commissioning of this project till later this year. We are currently hoping for December, but it might slip into January. And so it's all the infrastructure, all the roads will be completed, but we're waiting for all the equipment to actually operate the pumps and the valves within the water treatment plant. So those are the same type of materials as required, for example, for constructing cars. And as you can see on every lot, they are delayed as well. They are empty. So we're struggling with the same supply chain issues. Actually, if it's December or January from a water supply perspective, it doesn't really matter because it's winter and we won't be using it anyway. So from that perspective, we try to do it well and we do it good. And if it takes 2 weeks extra, it will take 2 weeks extra, and we'll get it commissioned and online as soon as we can. But the good news is the project is still slated to be within budget, which is a good news, especially given those supply chain issues. And happy to answer any other questions about this project. Thank you.
Thank you, GM. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I don't know if this is an answer you'll have today, but I want to ask this. So in the contract we had with the builder, the developer, or whatever we call the fellow, the company, there was an incentive that if they finished by a certain time, they would get a bonus. Now, given that it's supply chain issues, it's not their work or anything else, that it will be causing the delay in the commissioning of the well, how does that impact that bonus piece?
Thank you for the question. As indicated, the primary reason for the delay is the computerized controls for the pumps. But there are other factors part of the project that resulted in some delays. So we're currently having those discussions with the contractor on that clause, to what extent that still is valid, that bonus can be will need to be paid out or not.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Right. And meanwhile, the Langdale project is moving along. Is it likely also to be impacted by supply chain issues?
Thank you very much. That project, currently not, because it's primarily the testing, etc. The next stage for that project will be the application for a water license, and then the final design, or then the preliminary and final design will start. So before construction on that project will commence, we are 2 years away. I think more realistic 2 years away. So we have to see where we're at that time, but for now, no.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm probably oversimplistic in this thought, but I was just wondering if we had the pump in place, could you actually operate the valves and the pump manually if we were actually in that kind of trouble? Or is that controller integral to making the pump go?
Thank you very much for the question. These pumps are not on-off pumps. These are variable speed pumps, so they can be operated at a wide range of speeds. And they respond to differences in pressure, etc., etc. So even though theoretically we could pay for them to be operated manually, but in order to get them set up like that, we're talking about at least $250,000 even to get them to that place. And then we can operate them manually, and then we have to revert them back to computerized later in the year. Given that we don't expect to actually, I don't think that we will be able to get it even in place in September. I think it's not realistic from an operational perspective as well as not from a financial perspective. I think $250,000 to still operate them by hand, and not sure if it actually works because they're not designed to be operated by hand. It's too big a risk for us to take at the moment.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thanks for all the information. There was the information session that staff were at last night at Eric Cardinal Hall. I was there, and thank you for staff for engaging with some of the residents of Grantham's, particularly Elphinstone Avenue, who are going to be like ground zero for their road is going to disappear in front of their eyes. So there's anxiety around that and about access. And what was told at the information meeting is kind of between 7 and 5, the road will be closed for a number of weeks. So I think the public is just going, yeah, it's disruptive. How disruptive, and if they're really stuck, particularly around the curbside, have staff been kind of reaching out to them to, there's some elderly people on that road and it's steep, and what it's going to be looking like. So how are staff going to work with the residents to ensure that particularly curbside service continues and access to their houses? Just if you can say a little bit of the reassurance to the people on Elphinstone Avenue. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question. In terms of curbside, and I will talk about more in general, we will ensure that we will work with our contractor, and our contractor is instructed to ensure that at the end of every day there's access to the properties. Because, however, we'll also recognize that given that we have to install 3 water mains in that road, indeed the entire road will have to be ripped up and replaced. So we'll do it in chunks, so that there is always access to the majority of the properties, and maybe there will be times that maybe 1 or 2 properties are not available, not accessible throughout the day, and then we communicate with the residents. So there will be ongoing conversations, and there will be sufficient staff on site from our contractors to respond to any requests from residents. In terms of curbside pickup, we've communicated with the residents to bring their bins to or the corner of Elphinstone Fisher or Church and Central, to the 2 far ends, and staff are more than able to, or I will ask our contractor to see what it can do to help residents that are maybe have challenges in bring them up there, because I think it's easy job for a contractor to just walk up to the 2 bins.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands up. I think we'll move on at this point to point number 4, major appliances, recycling roundtable program. And we'll go right back to the GM of Infrastructure Services.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I have to find my speaking notes. There we are. Thank you, Chair Thijs. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the SRD to join a collector compensation program for major appliances. Currently, a small portion of the cost of every appliance that's purchased by anybody in BC is earmarked for the recycling of that appliance. The Major Appliance Recycling Program is the program that manages the recycling of those appliances and is funded from those collected additional revenues. Joining the program would result in the program funding to fully fund the recycling of all appliances that are being delivered to SRD facilities. This would allow the SRD to change the tipping fees for those appliances to $0. There would be no change in the actual recycling of these appliances. They would continue to be recycled as scrap metal. For a variety of reasons, the SRD didn't join the program so far. One of them being the lack of sufficient space in the drop-off area at the seashore landfill to manage the expected increase in amount of appliances delivered at the landfill, as associated with joining this program. Staff is seeking the board's support to join the program and prepare the required amendments to Bylaw 405 and the financial plan for the board's consideration. Staff are happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. I personally am a big fan of this, and I think it's great that folks in Pender Harbor won't have to drive all the way to Gibson's to recycle their appliances now. And I'll let Director McMahon weigh in.
Yeah, this seems like definitely good news. It's nice to have good news about solid waste, just for a change. So I'd be happy to move the recommendations on page 4.
All right, I see a seconder, multiple seconders. Okay, do we have any further comments on this? I don't see any. Okay, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All right, that motion carries. That was quick. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, textile recycling. And we'll go to Rebecca Port, Interim Manager for Solid Waste Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Diabetes Canada is currently assessing the feasibility of expanding their National Textile Diversion Program to include the Sunshine Coast. This program would include 5 to 10 textile recycled drop-off bins at various locations throughout the coast. 2 potential locations for bins that have been identified are SCRD sites, including the Seashell Landfill and Pender Harbor Transfer Station. Adding textile recycling drop-off at these sites could help to keep reusable materials out of the landfill while increasing diversion rates, which are currently at 57%. The Solid Waste Management Plan target for diversion rates is set to 65 to 69%. Diabetes Canada would run the program and would coordinate with the various locations that their bins are located. The bins would be serviced and materials processed by Diabetes Canada. SCRD involvement would be limited to hosting bins at our 2 sites and amending Bylaw 405 to include textiles as recycling with a tipping fee for textiles set to 0. Staff are looking for direction from the board in regards to moving forward with this opportunity if Diabetes Canada implements the program on the Sunshine Coast.
Thank you, Manager Port. And one other good news item. It's pretty easy to chair those meetings so far. I like the idea, and I'll let Director McMahon weigh in again.
Oh, those sounded like famous last words. No, this is definitely good news. When we have a tipping fee of 0, when people are bringing something in like that, then how does this work logistically? If you're bringing in a whole mixed load of junk, yeah. So do you go through more than once, or do you get your partner to jump out of the car and walk through with the fabric, or how does this work?
Thank you. If residents arrive at the landfill with a mixed load of a variety of materials, they might have to drive through the scale several times to make sure that we actually, and that's already current practice. If you have general waste and metal, you just drive through twice, and it will continue as well. I don't expect that you have to bring a lot of textiles to actually make it a difference at the scale. So in that case, residents we just ask to just drive one through the scale, and whatever else their major material type is, that will be charged. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Beamish?
Yes, we have that service already in Gibson's at the recycle depot, and I have used it myself. I just wonder if you've talked to the recycle depot about their experience with it, because I get the sense there's quite a bit of contamination goes in the bins, and they actually have to manage that, and to see what if it is truly a hands-off by SCRD staff type of program, or if there's going to be some requirement for them to police it.
Thank you for the question. In conversations with Diabetes Canada about their program that's run nationally, they said that 95% of what ends up in their bins is usable. So they have a 5% contamination rate that, and they are committed to doing all of the servicing of the bins. So from their perspective, it will be quite a hands-off operation for any of the bin hosts.
Great, thank you. And I also like the communications strategy as outlined on page 8, because I think that is a key part of it, is that people don't throw textiles away in the garbage anymore, that they actually do divert it. And that's, I think with the communication strategy is a key component of this to make this a success. Director McMahon again.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it sounds as if they are looking for more partners on the Sunshine Coast to make this program workable. Is there anything the community can do to help? Because I think we really do want to bring this program to the Sunshine Coast.
Thank you for the question. They have a list of places that they'll be reaching out to, including the libraries and some private businesses. So they have general places where they like to put their bins within each community, and so they are in the process right now of reaching out to those locations.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, looks like a great program to be involved in. The question I have is about the recording of the tonnage. Whether we'll have tonnages of textiles in terms of the diversion rate for the Sunshine Coast, and how will they be reporting back what they collect from the Sunshine Coast, and will those statistics somehow get involved in SCRD statistics about reporting how we deal with our solid waste? Thanks.
We'll see if we can get those data from from Diabetes Canada, but I assume that we get tonnage data from them.
Thank you. Director Lee.
I think this is a really great program, and I'm glad the SCRD decided to participate, or I hope we decide to participate. I know in Pender Harbour it goes to the thrift shop first, and then to the bins after. And without this, they were going to have to put it into the landfill, and they were very concerned. So I would, there's more hands up, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Okay, back to Director McMahon.
I was just going to move the recommendations on page 7.
All right. I don't see a seconder at this point. Oh, there's a few of them there now. Okay. All right. And suddenly all the hands went down. So I guess I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Moving on to Item 5A, the Cooper's Green Hall Replacement Project Update. And we'll just let GM Gagnon settle in and get herself ready, and then she can take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I want to thank you for permitting me with this late agenda item and also a verbal update. Staff felt compelled to draw your attention to this merging issue right away. And I believe I will be joined online by Kyle Doyle, who is our project manager for Cooper's Green, and also our CFO, Ms. Perot, to answer questions at the end of my update when required. So as the board is aware, last fall, staff engaged Principal Architect to complete a detailed design for Cooper's Green Hall replacement. Staff further engaged the services of a geotechnical consultant, whose contract was signed in February of 2022, to provide technical assessments that would inform the detailed design and ultimately the preparation of the construction documents. Unfortunately, this work was not completed in May, when staff provided the update on the construction budget to the board. Therefore, the design work and the recommendations at that time were still based on previous technical reports from 2017. Although the final report from the geotechnical consultant has not been received, preliminary information has highlighted the need to reconsider the suitability of the site. The consultants have confirmed that since the first report that was completed in 2017, industry standards and best practices have changed, especially related to the impacts of climate change-induced hazards. The new report is suggesting that to meet these new standards, the building would need to be elevated above the ground level by an additional 1.3 to 1.5, thereabouts, but around, meters from the current design to meet the recommended flood construction levels. Elevating the building would increase the civil and structural costs in a magnitude significant enough to threaten the project. The building was not designed to accommodate this elevation difference and cannot be accommodated without significant sacrifices to the original design. Further, the report is anticipated to recommend an erosion setback of 7.5 meters from the natural boundary of the shoreline. This would suggest relocating the building further east into the park, which would conflict with a number of mature trees that constitute a defining feature of the park and would not be desirable. While there are options to achieve a reduced setback distance, the associated requisite flood and erosion mitigation techniques would likely generate a substantial operating cost over the long term. Similarly, it may be possible to achieve a reduced flood construction level if the SCRD were willing to accept the liability from departing from the opinion of a registered professional and agree to commit to mandatory inspections and reporting as prescribed by an engineer. This would also require exceptions from our own bylaws and may impact future insurance premiums as a result of a decision to build contrary to best practice. Therefore, once the final geotechnical report has been received, staff anticipate a subsequent written report coming forward to the board that will recommend that the current project site be abandoned and that we work with the community to identify a more suitable site for the hall. I am sure this news will disappoint many in the community. However, I believe that the SCRD remains committed to the construction of this important community gathering space, perhaps just in a different location. This could also lead to a future community conversation for an updated vision for the Cooper's Green Park itself as well. Preliminary conversations with our granting representatives from ISIP indicate a willingness to work together to see if the project through to successful completion, but details are yet to be confirmed. We also know that the Half Moon Bay Community Association is actively promoting the Cooper's Green Hall replacement project and seeking donations. Continuing to work together in good faith, we wanted to make sure that the association and members of the community were aware of this change as soon as possible. Knowing there will likely be lots of questions, we have worked with our communications folks to prepare a question and answer document that will be posted to our website immediately following this meeting that we encourage members of the public to review. We will also continue to work collaboratively with the Half Moon Bay Community Association as we work through the next steps. Recognizing that the board does not meet in August, the written report and further updates may not occur until the fall. And Kyle and I and Manager Pro are available to answer any questions that the committee members may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that, and thanks for the timely notice. I guess I'll open it up for comments and questions from the directors. So far, I'm not seeing any hands up, though. Oh, Director Pratt.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, GM Degnan. It's obviously it's not the information that anybody wanted to hear. However, it's better to know now rather than when we put a shovel in the ground. Until we have that final report, we don't have any idea on timeline or anything like that. So I think we're kind of in a bit of a waiting pattern until that happens, and yeah.
Okay, Director McMahon. Oh, GM, did you want to speak to that?
Sorry, thank you. You're right, I don't have timelines right now, but I would reiterate that the intent is not to sit back and wait. The intent, obviously, we need the report and we need to bring forward the written recommendations to the board. But we do know that we've got a grant, and if the board chooses to have us pursue an alternate location, then we will be moving as quickly as we can. We don't want to have this sit just because. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll go to Director McMahon now.
Right, I think, yeah, pursuing an alternate location makes sense because obviously the hall is going to need to be replaced. It does beg a bunch of questions, though, about the future of our waterfront parks. I am not holding out high hopes for Chester House being above water in another, say, 40 years. And so I think we need to be considering that in our planning. And also, I wonder if we are ever going to look at any kind of a policy around community halls. The acquisition of them, why we have them, where we have them, who pays for them, all that kind of thing. We have no policy now. It's a system that's just being put together as it happened. But it's worth it sometime looking at it and asking some questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Director McMahon. And Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. The industry standard and best practices have changed. I think it sounds like it's flood construction levels. That, to me, would seem like it could have impacts on not just Cooper's Green Hall, but of course, residential construction as well. Is there somewhere where we can find this new standard? Is there? I know it's a tough question for you. Maybe I'm asking the wrong person, but I'm curious about that new standard.
Thank you. I will default to Manager Doyle on this question because I suspect he'll be better able to answer it than I would. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Director, for the question. I think when it comes to specific industry standards, we can look to the EGBC website for practice guidelines and that sort of thing. There's a variety of other resources for local governments when they're making their policies and whatnot. There's the land use management guidelines for flood hazard assessments are the specific one that's updated in 2018, subsequent to this report being issued from the geotech consultant. And in that document, there was specifically some more stringent standards around flood construction for oceanic flood hazards. We moved from a less prescriptive to a more prescriptive model. And so that's basically the main point. I'd be happy to find some of these standards and link them to you if you're interested in reading some more.
Yes, thanks. I am interested, so if you get a minute, you could just drop something to me. I had done, I'd surfed the web prior to voting last time, and everything looked good, so I obviously missed something. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it would probably be of interest of places like pods as well. And sorry? Oh, okay, yeah, great. All right, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, thank you very much for the update. I guess I'm going board's role at this point. So more information will be simulated, reported, analyzed, and then September would be likely when decisions would come before the board. And I'm wondering about the change of location, how that fits in with the grant and things like this. Is this, we will know about this later, or is this something, do we need to say, yeah, we want to look for a new location now, or where are we with that aspect of it? Do we need any decision at this point? Thanks.
To staff.
Thank you for the question. So the purpose of today is an information, just to raise awareness. So no decision is being requested at this time. However, once we have the geotechnical report in our hands, then we will be in a position to come forward to make a recommendation to pursue alternate sites for the hall. And at that same time, hopefully, depending on the time frame of how long it takes me to get the geotechnical report and get back in front of the board, we'll be able to have sort of at a high level worked through some new timelines as well. In terms of the actual location in the grant, I just want to take this opportunity to suggest that previous communications with the granting body have suggested there's an openness to an alternate location as long as it's within Half Moon Bay. But we would have to make those formal applications to the granting body to get permission to make a change to our original agreement. But there is a willingness to see projects succeed. And so we are confident that we can work together with our granting body. But again, that detail and decisions are yet to be provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Oh, I love cans of worms. It just occurred to me that the last time we had that we looked seriously at our ports and wharves was before the engineering standards changed. So I assume that particularly ports and wharves are going to be affected by new engineering standards. Sounds like fun coming our way. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Yeah, just thinking about if we are going to review whether halls are part of parks and whether we want to continue with that kind of thing, I thought we were going to update the parks master plan pretty soon. Have I got my memory faulty, or is that already on the books? Or because it seems to me if we update the parks master plan, we could include the halls in the concept. I'm interested in your comments.
Oh, I don't believe your memory's ever at much of a loss, Director Lee. We have talked about it in open board before about the desire to update our Recreation and Parks Master Plan. And I think I've referred to it more of a community recreation facility needs assessment, perhaps. So there's some different things that we can look at. We do need to do something like that over the next few years because we have some aging recreation facilities. I do think that that would be the appropriate time to consider halls because they are a community recreation facility, and find out what the desire of our community is as it relates to the future of our halls as well. You will not see that coming forward in budget 2023, but you will see it coming forward soon because it needs to be done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't see any further hands up. I will, I guess, move on to communications at this point. Thank you, GM, for that timely news and giving us something to ponder for over our August break. We'll move on to communications, so I'll have a motion to receive all communications. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you. And we'll start with number 6 from Ruth Simons, President, Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative Society. And we apparently have in that letter some requests for letters of support and a few other things. So willing to open the discussion to the floor on that. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, well, I guess this is more of a mostly a West Howe Sound Area F with a little bit of E thrown in. Yeah, how I'm seeing this is kind of in 2003 when the Howe Sound Community Forum started at version 1, and we're kind of at version 3. It's kind of where no one actually knew in 2003 where we would end up, I think. So this is, as I see it, it's this iterative process of how people around Howe Sound communities are working together to achieve common objectives. So I am supportive of pretty much everything. I've got some questions about kind of commitments made around the board and how it affects staff, because if I'm thinking particularly around the hosting of the forum, which for me seems like more like serious dating. Is kind of like, you know, we were kind of quite loose and, you know, we're all getting together, but now we have this system, and it's time to put more effort into the relationship, I think, is where we are. I do have some ongoing questions about how it would be funded and committing staff to the future. Yeah, it seems more like common law than marriage, but it does feel like entering into this relationship that I'm not sure what I'm going to commit the future board to, but is that too close for, I don't know, that's how I feel.
Thank you. Maybe staff has some comments on a prenup? Any comments from staff regarding the commitment for hosting a Howe Sound Community Forum in the future?
We'd likely just need to look into whether or not we would need specific direction or what the parameters would be for hosting such an event. It'd be easy to look into that and get back to you.
Okay, Director McMahon.
I did have some similar questions, because I believe it's in the MOU, it asks us to assign a staff member as a liaison, and it's just, you know, we want to check in with staff to see what that would incur. And I was trying to find out, we did host the forum in 2017. Went really well, but I just would appreciate a little bit more looking into actual costs and logistics for doing it again, and how did we pay for it last time, and how would we pay for it this time. But my main nitpicking points are on page 22 in the MOU. The boundaries of the biosphere region are drawn along the watershed lines. And so Area E is partway in. We've got some toes in the water there, but we are mostly not in. But if you read the MOU, it says that approximately 6,290 people live within the boundary, and that's not true. See, what they've done is they've added together Area F and Area E, all of Area E. And so, you know, I'm happy to participate because part of Area E is in this, and it's a worthy cause, and they're doing good work. But I don't want my full population counted in here because I don't think it's fair. I'd be happy with, you know, a third of Area E being counted towards the total, particularly since we will be paying on a per capita basis. So I would like to reach some agreement with the biosphere on how much of Area E gets counted. And so how do we go about that would be the next question.
Okay. I think there's some, yes, it looks like somebody might need to step up and and craft some communication. I don't know if we want to do this in a motion right here. It looks like it's going to be it would be a bit of a messy motion to create at this point. So maybe we'll see if we can direct someone to take that back and put something together. Director Beamish, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, just to let you know, the town of Gibsons has agreed to host a forum in 2023, and we have allocated, directed staff to put those funds in the budget for 2023. It's approximately 70 people, so it's just a matter of coordinating the staff cost of coming back and forth and the hosting of the forum. So we are doing that for our community, and we certainly support the SCRD if they do something in a broader sense subsequent to that, but 2023 in Gibsons.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Given this has just shown up on our agenda here, and some of the questions that came up, I'm wondering if we would want to just refer this to staff and say, come back with what it would look like for budget implications for 2023 and ongoing, given that there'll be cost for directors as well. So where does that show up for the directors who are attending those, and staff time that needs to be included? And then it'll come back to us in time for inclusion in the budget should we need something.
Thank you. I guess my question at that point is do we still want to move forward with creating a motion at this point for a letter of support and the support of the MOU in principle, or is that something that we would want to move on to that future report as well?
Okay, I'll follow up on that. I think the letter indicates that we are going to sign the MOU, but we need to know what the implications of that are first. That's where I come from, so, but whatever else, anybody else to say?
Okay, Director McMahon.
Well, I wouldn't sign the MOU because I'm concerned about the population in the MOU. I would be happy with the letter of support for the principles for cooperation, but we should check in with staff before we commit to host the forum, and about, you know, amending the MOU before we sign it. That's my feeling.
Okay. So should we leave it up to staff to maybe put together some of the concerns around the population, as well as a report as outlined by Director Seegers? And does staff need a motion for that?
Yeah, a motion providing direction to staff to come back at a future meeting with a report outlining those things would be of benefit. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'll make that motion, and I think it should reference all the pieces on page 23 under number 6. Right, there's a staff liaison position. What does that mean? What about funding for us to be participants in the forums? Budget, right, there's the host, principles of cooperation, priority goals, etc.
All right. My question is Lori, do you have all that? Do you want to read that out in a motion, maybe? Yeah.
I would like to add to the recommendation that staff report back with budget allocations for 2023 and ongoing, referencing page 23, number 6.
Okay, and then do we need any further comments around the population and all those details, or should we just, are those kind of implied at this point? Pages 22 around the population. Item 3. Okay. And then we've got comments around staff workload and capacity, right? So those are, I think, are our chief concerns. So if that could all be in the motion. Do we need to put it, to read the whole thing out again, or should we just vote for that?
Question?
Yeah.
Do we need clarity in there about the, because some of the staff won't be in here, do we need clarity about what we want addressed with regards to Elphinstone population in there?
Well, I'd like to hit an agreement of a percentage of the Elphinstone population to count as being in the biosphere. So, you know, for instance, a third. And then ongoing every time the population is updated, we're good to go.
Okay. All right. I will, yeah, I'm just wondering if we should get a seconder for that motion first, and then we'll go to Director Hiltz. Okay, we've got a seconder, and then Director Hiltz.
Yeah, thanks. So essentially, it's to refer to staff for some clarification. I think that's kind of the gist of it, because of committing them into the future, and part of that is where does the responsibility for participating for that within the Howe Sound Community Forum lie? In what department? You know, that's because it used to be in one department. That department ceased to exist, and now that department has been resurrected. So kind of, sort of. I think it is better to do it all in one package, because one piece does lead into the next. There's not one that stands completely alone, so doing it all as one would be, I think, more complete in doing it. So I think that's, and one of the questions that I had is, Director McMahon is talking about the per capita, and this request is not looking for this. You know, originally there was some talk at the Howe Sound Community Forum to do a per capita allocation of costs. And that seems to have been left off. It's not in here anywhere directly. They're not looking for like a lump sum. I think that's embedded in there, and it will come into the future. But I think getting the population kind of where the lines are, kind of straightened out, I think is a good thing to do. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a reasonable. It's motion, so the expectation would be in September. It'd be nice to get this done in this term. So having it come back by September would be, if that's possible. Thanks.
Okay, Director Lee.
Yes, I have quite a few questions, but I believe that the motion should handle them. I'd like to see staff investigate and bring back clarifications, reports. Who's going to pay for it? It's probably rural planning, but I'm not sure. Budget, staffing implications on our workload. I think all of those need to be in the report. And so I wouldn't like us to actually make any decisions at this time, because there's too much unknowns. I think we need our staff to have a good look and tell us. I was wondering about the percent population in biosphere, but I think that if I understand now, we need that population to figure out what percentage we pay into the biosphere development and ongoing management itself, not for us to figure out how to pay for our participation. So I think I've got all that good now, so thank you.
Okay, Director Seegers.
Thank you. On page 23, under number 6, The last bullet, I know I attended some of the last forum and there was conversation then about hiring some staff. I'm wondering if this bullet is actually referencing that, because it talks about grants and or in-kind support for educational opportunities and projects. So funding resources for them for that. They're not saying we want to hire somebody to be able to run these, but is that the subcontext for what the bullet is? Anybody? I don't know. Yeah, Director Hiltz?
I think that it's kind of how does HESBRI become a going concern for sustainability, and how, so there's been the talk about the ED position. I think at the forum there isn't enough agreement on how to do it, how to allocate the costs. Metro Vancouver, West Vancouver has 70,000 people, and if you do it on a per capita, so I think those are still conversations that are going to come out. So as I read into this, the grant and aid process for electoral areas is still one way to be able to operate under our current policies without doing something more formalized in terms of a service area for the whole house sound that everyone puts in 10 cents. Like that's a big hill to climb, I think. So this is where it's kind of, it's again cooperation. How do we cooperate? But I think it's moving along in the relationship. Okay, we're cooperating, but cooperation takes some resources. So I don't think there's anything clearly asked for, but it is a subtext of the sustainability of HESBRI, and that's where for me it's what is the benefit of HESBRI or the biosphere to the SCRD as a whole, and how do we participate? So that's the kind of how I'm seeing that. Is it's a future thing. I'm sure we could, if we could put in whatever amount, and they said, yeah, bring it on. But I think there's this fairness of allocation which is going to be coming in future forums, I think. Is that as it is now, HESBRI will be operating the management plan for the biosphere, and the Howe Sound Community Forum will be a program underneath of that. That's their convening role. So right now there has not been an official convener. It's been an ad hoc up to this. So this is putting more formalized stuff around it. So I think that's what that bullet is about, is get ready for the future. We're still not there. We still haven't got the management. The unity plan isn't in place. Like we haven't seen it. These documents say that we'll be supporting that unity plan, but that's in development. So, this is, for me, this is, and I've never seen this kind of participation. The MOU, how this region cooperates in a way that they never have to cooperate. We're making up, this isn't, we're figuring it out to some degree as we're going along, and it's becoming more solidified as we go along. So is that sort of kind of answer? Thanks.
Okay, Director McMahon.
Going forward, I'd really like to know where they've drawn the boundary. And I realize in one sense it doesn't matter because you can't cut a biosphere, down a line like this. But I'm just curious, for the sake of administering this biosphere, who's in, who's out. Not going to go around and count noses, but still would like to know where the line goes. The map that I was going from was, it wasn't to scale so that I could actually see. It looks to me like part of Gibson's isn't in and parts of Area E are in, but I couldn't really tell. But that's a curiosity piece. That's not a showstopper. Thank you.
It seems to me that, I guess, the watershed is probably the sort of the dividing line, and as to where that exactly is, I guess that's up to the experts. Okay, just one thought was maybe that we have this motion at this point on the table, and then maybe we'll do the letter of support in a separate motion afterwards, or is that already included? Is it included in this motion already? Okay, so there's an and that a letter of support for the updated Howe Sound Community Forum Principles for Cooperation is included in this And is that how everybody here understands it? Okay. Director Beamish.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the town of Gibsons is fully in terms of commitment to the biosphere. We see it as a benefit not only for the Howe Sound, rejuvenation of Howe Sound, the Salish Sea, but also the whole Sunshine Coast. There's a significant international tourism opportunity here promoting the biosphere, being part of the biosphere for our communities, and we see that as one opportunity, as well as we have a healthy harbor program. Tuesday night at council, we resolved to look at the long-term conservation and protection of Charmer Creek and its watershed area, and looking at all of that. All of these are important to the natural assets of our area. So we have agreed to sign the MOU, and we have agreed to provide funding and support for the biosphere. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what the vote is on at this point, and I hope that staff is somewhat clear as to what we're doing. Any Director Seegers?
Thank you. When I look at the sample of the communication requested, the last part indicates that we would basically sign the attached memorandum of understanding, which we're saying we're not going to do that at this point because we can hear back from staff. So if we're saying we want to send a letter of support, what are we supporting now? I mean, so I would say the letter of support would be part of what would come back from the staff. Once we see that, we can say, yes, we'll support this, and this is what it looks like. But again, open to interpretation.
Yeah, thanks. I just thought that the letter of support would be on the updated Howe Sound Community Farm Principles for Cooperation, which isn't the MOU. So I think we're agreeing in principle on those principles of for cooperation. I think it's the MOU we're not quite in favor of. So I think the letter of support could still be sent at this point. But Director McMahon, you've got something to say?
Yeah, what Director Seegers is saying is that the draft letter of support, as provided on page 20, includes the MOU. So why don't we just pull this all together as one package, bring it back as one package at the same time, and get her done? Okay, that sounds good. Just out of process questions, do we need to amend that motion at this point, or is it just is everybody clear as to what we're voting on and we're good to go? Director Hiltz?
Taking it as a package, don't pulling it up as a part. And the only action that would be that we staff would be replying back of what we're doing, that staff is having, essentially reviewing it for us. I think that's what staff is, just seeing where the elected and the staff kind of comes together, and that the decision will be coming later in the fall. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it move along. So in order to keep the Hesbury up to date, just they need something back to say that, yeah, we're more or less on board. We just need to kind of figure out where our processes lie. So that's how. I'm not sure if, I guess we will need a motion for staff to send a letter back about what's happened, I suppose. So whether that's up to staff, I guess. Sorry.
All right, Director McMahon.
I think that's getting a little into the weeds, particularly as we have Ian Wynn in the audience here, and he's listening to us thrash. So I think the message will get through.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I don't see any more hands up. I will call the question on the motion that is convoluted but hopefully clear to everyone. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to number 7, the Sunshine Coast Farmers Institute Board, dated June 27th, 2022, regarding feedback on water rates and regulations, bylaw number 422. And I'll open the floor up for questions and comments. Director Hills, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'll start off. What's kind of interesting for me is that I don't think the regional district really has a policy on agricultural water. Looking at the letter, of the ones that I'm more tending towards, the number one, the permanent exemption would be for not livestock, but for vegetables, like non-animal crops. And as I look around other areas, that doesn't seem to be kind of, at stage 4, it's an emergency and everyone needs to experience the pain, right? We're working as a community for health and safety. And so there's going to be loss at stage 4. But I think the way other jurisdictions are looking at it is it an annual loss or is it a perennial loss? If you lose an animal, you lose a longer asset, or if you lose like a fruit tree, you lose an asset that has a longer lifetime, opposed to if you lose a lettuce crop. So that's kind of where I'm thinking about the stage 4 is it seems almost too much for agriculture. The 50% is interesting, as just looking around is water prices for agriculture can be quite low. Like in the interior, I've seen like 20 cents a cubic meter or 8 cents a cubic meter. And here we're charging $1.56 or something, like whatever, $1.56. So how the community wants to support agriculture through a price reduction for their fees is something that I think the community probably needs to be talking about. So I'm just wondering about the letter, that the subject was feedback. So was this solicited by the regional district, I guess is where I started, or how did we get the letter? Thanks.
How did we get the letter, staff?
Thank you, by email. But the more broad answer is, earlier this year, the board asked staff to engage with the farming community about updates to bylaw 422 that we're proposing on how to define commercial water use for farms. So we had engagement session with farmers. We invited all farmers that currently have farm status under the BC Assessment Act for a meeting in June, and we're open to receiving feedback from the farming community until the end of June, but any time after, of course, would be accepted as well, considered. So we're currently going through the responses received, and we will include this response in that response. And we're working towards a board report to be brought forward early September on the results of that engagement, and seek direction from the board on next steps. In terms of a broader policy around yesterday's position towards agricultural water use, I think that is one of the items that actually should be placed within the context of the broader water strategy that we're currently being developed. What is the role of the SRD in providing water? To what extent? What kind of farms? What is the value we give to providing water to farms versus water to other commercial users that are dependent on water for continuing their business? There are landscape companies that are significantly impacted as well during stage 3 and 4. So all those more value discussions, I think they will take place as part of the water strategy development work that we've initiated. So at the same time, this fall and winter, we'll start engaging with the community about our rate structure for water. What kind of rate structure do we want moving forward? And is supported by the board that will result in a change in rate structure for water moving forward. So also as part of that discussion, of that process, the discussion will take place. What is the rate for that will be charging for commercial users in general, and do we want to have a specific rate for these kind of for commercial farms? And one of the questions that are currently outstanding that we're currently still working through is if we would set a special rate, dedicated rate for commercial farms, would that be considered assistance to a business under the community charter that the SRD is not able to provide? So that is one of the questions that we're currently working through and hope to get an answer on soon. So there are several processes in place that I think are related to this. The first one is our results from our engagement, bring back a report to the board on that. I think the broader policy discussion can take place as part of the water strategy development process that will be initiated, and that is initiated. And I think the rate structure review process feed into that as well. And I think just as a reminder, early this year, the board already provided the 2-week exemption, if stage 4 were to be called, to farmers. And based on the current water supply situation, as I presented earlier today, if stage 4 would be required, I don't see that happening anytime before mid-September, half September, mid-September. So a 2-week exemption would bring it then until late September. And I think by that time, most valuable crops would be harvested already. And so I think the actual need this summer or the potential benefit this summer for a full exemption, I think is relatively low compared to earlier years.
All right, sounds like it's not a matter of if we need to have this discussion, it's a matter of when and in what context we need to have this discussion. And it sounds like the urgency for this summer isn't quite there yet. So yeah, I guess the question is, should we move this on to the water strategy talks and make that as part of the larger envelope, or do we need to move on this now? I'll let Director Seegers weigh in.
Thank you. Okay, I have a few things around this. Yes, the Local Government Act says we cannot provide assistance to an industrial, commercial, or business undertaking. We already have rates for residential and commercial. So we are already providing preferential rates to a certain group of people. I think we're going to find that when we investigate this, that if we, as long as it's not one business, if we have a class of business and we identify what that is and it's clear, we're not just, discriminating based on anything. It's if you have commercial farm status, you get this rate. I think we're going to find we're okay. So I think we do need to look at other jurisdictions who are already doing this, because if they're doing it, it's got to be legal somewhere, somehow. Timing, I think we need to do this sooner rather than later. When we have a farm, we can't tell them in May next year that this is what it's going to be. They need to start doing their planning already this year for next year, because they buy their seed, they do all of their planning. So we can't wait until spring to come in with whatever the scheme is that we're going to be providing food or water for them. And then the other piece is, if we look around the world, and this was actually brought up in one of the meetings that we were at, Peru is short of water. California, desperately short of water. The Lower Mainland had a flood last year, and we know that there's not going to be a lot of food coming there. We're already seeing prices go through the roof. We need to become more food. We have to have our own food here on the Sunshine Coast, at least a portion of it. And the only way we can do that is to support the farmers who are actually growing food. So very much in support of providing different rates for farmers, commercial farmers who do this, and to ensure that they have water through stage 4. Because we don't know in the future when stage 4 will hit. Even with the additional water we're getting, we say we're going to stay at stage 2, but we don't know that. We don't know what next year's going to bring. And so I think we need to give them certainty around their water supply. My understanding was that in, I think one of the sessions I was at, it was like 1 to 2%, and you can clarify this for me, Remco, 1 to 2% of our potable water supply from Chapman goes to the commercial farmers. If that's the case, that's a small piece and could just have us declare stage 4 earlier if we needed to provide them with the water they need.
Thanks for those comments, and yeah, I echo that sentiment on needing to support farmers, but then of course you get into the details fairly quickly when you start looking at best practices and drip irrigation versus sprinkler irrigation and all those kind of things, and you can get down the rabbit hole fairly quickly. So there is that need to have that as part of the larger water strategy discussion. GM Rosenboom, you wanted to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you. I would just want to respond to the remark from Dr. Seegers regarding the actual amount of used by these farmers. So currently on the coast we have 52 farms that meet the classification of the BC Assessment Act to be qualified as a farm status under the BC Assessment Act. 52 of them, about close to 40, based on most recent data we have, which is several years old, about 40 are involved in growing food. Those 40 are using about 2.2% of our water supply during stage 4.
Thank you for that. Director McMahon.
Yes, much has already been covered. It looks like we are not going to have a water crisis. Oh, I should be careful what I say, shouldn't I? This year. Well, we hope. Certainly not early. Like last year, having a water supply crisis in August was pretty critical for farms. But I appreciate the comments by Director Seegers about providing some certainty for farmers going forward, because we do need to do that. This has been a really difficult few years, and so we do need to set these policies in place, I think, sooner rather than later. Darn. I'll come back to it later.
Okay, thank you. Director Beamish.
No, I certainly agree with Director Seeger's comments as well. You only have to look to the province to see that agricultural land is treated differently. I mean, just the taxation scheme for it. If you're growing, if you're producing, if you're generating income from your agricultural land, you don't pay taxes. Yet we're charging for water and worried that that might be a commercial benefit. I don't believe it is, and I think that we need to recognize the importance of agriculture in our communities. You know, I'm hoping. I mean, that we've just seen land cleared again down on the highway, agricultural land, loads of logs going off it in what is an area that is already sensitive. I'm hoping that's going to convert to agricultural use and productivity, because otherwise it's going to release more water into the ground, from the ground, sort of thing. So, but I think that we need to support agriculture. We will depend on it in the future, and just trying to get a human over on the ferries these days is enough, let alone a bunch of carrots. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the assurance piece for farming. Yeah, comparing us to the Okanagan, when I look, we really haven't dug into the agricultural allocation of water on the Sunshine Coast. So I'm in terms of the rate structure. So Director Seegers, you're thinking of, like, for next year to have in place some kind of agricultural fee structure. That's kind of where you're kind of thinking, is not for this year, but for next year. So where would that piece come in terms of a board decision for the rate structure? Is that through the utilities? Is that going to come into user fees? So Just, yeah, wondering about the timing of when that piece would come before us. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to staff first and see if GM Rosenboom has something to say.
Thank you for the opportunity. Staff, as usual, staff will bring forward our proposal for rates for next year as part of committee meeting in November. If there's a desire, currently the rate structure that we have in place do not separate farms from any other commercial entities. If there's a desire to do so, we would need direction to do that.
Okay, Director Lee.
Very interesting discussion, and it's probably taken place worldwide right now. Everybody's got the same problem. Well, our problem's not as bad as most others, actually, which is quite fortunate, because we can see a solution in the near future. So, but I don't see the risk is less this year than typical years. So I don't see a need for a panic decision. We do have the 2-week extension already, and I can see where that could work. We haven't decided how we're going to use meters yet, which could help everybody. And we will have more information on who's using what and what we have to do rate-wise to make it fair. I worry about I was going to say gentleman farmers, but I got trouble last time, so I'll go with the gentleperson farmers. They have an equal need for water as well. And we did note that last year when there was no extension, only for the commercial. And a lot of people lost their crops, which was for them and their neighbors. So we need to fix that too. So I firmly believe the water supply strategy and the rate structures is broad enough to answer this question for us. I guess the only question in my mind is, would it happen before there's an emergency next year? And maybe staff could give me some idea on that one, that part.
All right, staff.
Thank you very much for the question. Currently, the intent is to bring a draft discussion paper on the water strategy or a draft water strategy forward to the board early next year. So that could provide the policy guidance on the SRD's position with respect to supporting farms with water.
Thank you.
Director McMahon.
Yes, we're sort of edging towards where we're going, and we're making no decisions today, but I'm concerned about the difference between agriculture and food security. Those are not necessarily the same thing. You can be a registered farm and grow trees or horses. So if our goal is to promote food security, then we have to look at a somewhat different definition of food growing in terms of water restrictions. And that becomes very difficult because how do we declare who is a food grower, who is a food farmer? We can't be alone wrestling with this. I expect it's a problem in other jurisdictions too, but because of the lack of active farming on the coast and the fact that there are a lot of very small parcels that are producing food, but not on a scale of, say, the Comox Valley, we're left in a bit of a quandary about how to support food security through water policy. I don't know if staff have any observations on that.
Go ahead, staff.
Thank you. So the definition, how to define commercial farms, that was actually that is the primary topic of the engagement in general. So That's we're looking into that and also doing comparison to what other jurisdictions are doing. The number of jurisdictions in BC that actually are struggling with this topic is actually pretty low, because there are not that many local governments that are providing potable water to farms. We're one of the fair review. For example, in Okanagan, they do it, but they got a separate separate water system only for irrigation purposes. So that's not potable water, that's untreated water. And so we are doing that scan, but we won't find a lot of inspiration with others. I think we're here on the forefront.
Yeah, okay. I guess that could be also another discussion for the water strategy, whether it might be easier to incentivize or subsidize water infrastructure made specifically for farms, like rainwater collection would be cheaper than actually treating all that water that will then go to them in the long run. But that's certainly another can of worms that I don't want to unpack right now. Director Seegers.
Thank you. So timing. If we're looking at a water strategy coming back to the board early next year, that will not inform rates that are going to be coming the end of this year and budget for next year. So if we want something to happen with regards to commercial farms and water for the rates this year, so they can plan for next year, you need a recommendation now saying, we want you to come forward with a recommendation for special rates or water, stage 4 water restrictions or whatever in the upcoming rate structure. Is that correct?
Thank you. While the discussion was happening, I was thinking about exactly that question. I think what staff would recommend or would suggest is that we would first bring a report forward for the board's consideration on the question if we want a separate rate, and before we actually bring forward the rates itself in November.
So you'd like us to request that you bring a report on rates, or you're already planning on doing that? Okay.
No,
so
we would need my suggestion would be that we bring forward, that staff would bring forward a report to a future committee on developing a separate rate for commercial farms.
Okay, and I think Laurie's been typing that. I'll make that recommendation.
And I see a seconder. Director Hills, do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, and I think it's, it's separating out the allocation of the water versus the cost of the water, and the cost is, if farmers pay less, someone else is going to pay more, right? So that's within our territory. So the allocation seems to be more that water strategy, and right now I think the water allocation strategy that we have for farmers is okay. It's the fee structure. So that's why I'm thinking that the report from staff to inform the utility rates in that two-step process of report from staff to inform commercial, some different fee structure for farms, and then the utility rates in November. So a two-step process, I think is, and so yeah, that's why I'm supportive of that action. Thanks.
Okay, Director McMahon.
Do we want to say farms, or do we want to say commercial food growers?
Well, good question. Director Seegers, you have some thoughts on that?
Yes, I'll address both of those. So the commercial, I went to the water session for the commercial farmers, and they agree that it needs to be clear so that people can read it, staff can interpret it. There's no, yes, this person is, no, that person isn't. It's based on what they report to Revenue Canada. They can say, here's the sheet in my income tax return, I'm a commercial farmer. And so they get the special rate, whatever that is. So, you know, is it, yes, I grow food too, but I'm not commercial. I'm growing it some for me. So, I mean, I get where you're going, like just people who grow a lot of food, but they're not commercial. And we can't, I don't think we can expect staff to be able to have to go out and check people's yards to see what they're growing, what they're not growing. That's one piece. The other piece, and this would be back to staff, inside of this report that you're bringing forward, will you also look at what the implication of exempting them from stage 4 water restrictions would be, or would that be something separate?
Thank you for the question. Referring to the remark from Director Hilt, I think there is a difference between the water allocation itself, what do we allow in which stage, and the rates. Currently, these 52 farms have a pay metered rate, a commercial rate, which is metered. So they pay for what they use, and the request is to pay a different rate for the water they use. I think that's a different question than the question on what stage are they allowed to use water or not. And that's part of the because that's really a DRP bylaw 42 discussion. So at the end of every year, we bring forward a report with an evaluation of the implementation of the DRP this year and recommendations for next year. So I think that will be the time where we can, where the board could provide us with clear direction on what is the change you want to see with respect to the DRP for next year. And like this year, we will make sure, and that direction will already provide some clarity and guidance to farmers for what they can expect next year. And usually what we do in February, we present the actual DRP itself. But prior to that, there will be already direction provided, can be direction provided by the board, what they would like to see included in that. Hope that helps.
Okay. Director McMahon.
Sorry, but I'm still drilling into the definition of a commercial farmer. So is the definition that you are a commercial farmer according to your income tax return, or is it that you have a registered farm with the Agricultural Land Commission? Because those are not the same thing. I mean, there are people who are growing food on property that is not ALR.
GM, you've got your mic on.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you. I put it off and not handy. That's actually exactly the question that we're currently trying to answer is what is a useful and feasible definition of farms that of what a commercial group food producing farm is. Currently, the bylaw states exclude for in one stages 1, 2, and 3 commercial food producing farms without it providing any definition on how to define that. So I think that's the answer that we're trying to get back to get answered and provide a response to, provide recommendations on in the report that we anticipate to bring forward in September. And I think that will answer the question about how do we define it and how do we enforce it and control it. Are we going to do audits, or is it an application process, or how do we manage that? And I think that's, or is it an annual application process where we do audits to confirm the status of each farm? Is it related to sales, or is it related to the intent to make profit? Because there's also two different things. There are farms that only produce several eggs to cover their cost. Is that a farm? Maybe under the BC Assessment Act it is, but is it a commercial farm, food producing farm that we would like to support as an SRD? So that's the type of questions we are currently working through.
I also know some people who have a fairly large operation and produce solely for the food bank, and you know, so profit and sales is certainly not a measure for them. Director Hills.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh into the what's a farm, what's not a farm, and for me, if there's a third party such as BC Assessment that does that, that's a nice solution. It's like nonprofit societies are registered within British Columbia, so you have a third party, and you don't put the weight on the local government to decide as to be the referee. So you let BC Assessment be the referee, and you know that's kind of where I end up is you can start to go down the rabbit hole of what commercial is, and rather than just take a definition that's at the provincial level. And for me, BC Assessment farm class is whatever you need to do to get it, and it might not be perfect, but it is a third party, and it's out of the hands of the regional district. So that's where I kind of come down, but I'd be waiting to see what the staff report is. So. But that I couldn't wait to say that, so I had to say it. Thanks.
Okay, I believe we have a motion on the floor, don't we? I don't see any further hands up. Are we clear on what the motion is? Or do we need that read out again? Sorry? We're good? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, motion carries. And is there any more on this topic that we would like to discuss? I don't see any hands flying up. Thank you for that. I guess we'll move to our in-camera portion of the agenda. We have 0 attendees in the audience right now, but I will read it out anyway, that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 91K of the Community Charter. Negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. I would like to ask for a motion. Move, second it, and all those in favor? Thank you. All right. Well, yes, let's give a 10-minute break. Oh, Thank you, and we are back out of in camera for the Committee of the Whole, Thursday, July 14th. I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay, that concludes the meeting.